cold hung in the air like a curtain that morning in Seattle, the kind that seeps through coats and lingers on eyelashes. The streets were wrapped in fog, and every breath came out in soft white clouds that disappeared too soon. Night's rain still glistened in puddles. The city hadn't yet woken fully. Laya Monroe stood on the sidewalk by an aging motel tucked behind a gas station that smelled faintly of diesel and wet pavement. She rubbed her gloved hands together, then reached down to hold her daughter's smaller one, warm, tiny, fragile in the mist. Mia, 5 years old and far too bright for the gray morning, shivered under her pink coat and white sweater. Her little shoes tapped against the concrete like they were trying to make the day move faster. Next to them sat Laya's world in a single canvas tote, one folder with her resume, a plastic container of homemade snacks, a tissue packet, and a simple hope that life might finally bend in her favor today. She checked her phone for the 10th time. A notification blinked. "Your Uber has arrived." Laya exhaled, half relief, half prayer. The interview was less than 40 minutes away. If she got the job, she could finally stop worrying whether rent would outrun her paycheck. Then the car came, a sleek black SUV, the kind that looked allergic to cheap motels and cracked sidewalks. It purred to a stop in front of her, shining too brightly beneath the cloudy sky. She didn't think twice. She pulled open the back door. "Hi, sorry, I'm a little late." "Thank you for waiting," she said, breathless but hopeful, guiding Mia in before sliding in herself. "Can you take us to 17th and Madison, please?" The man in the driver's seat turned slightly, and Laya caught a quick glimpse of him. White dress shirt, top button undone. A navy blazer resting neatly on the passenger seat. Short, dark hair with a streak of effortlessness, like he hadn't needed to try to look put together. His face was calm, unreadably calm. "Of course," he said simply, his voice low and smooth. "Please buckle up." Laya nodded quickly, fastening the seatbelt for both Mia and herself. The SUV eased forward, merging with the quiet hum of morning traffic. For a few minutes, the world settled into stillness. Only the rhythmic sweep of wipers and the soft voice of a child filling the gap. "Look, Mommy," Mia pointed. "The trees look sleepy too." Laya smiled faintly, brushing a thumb under her daughter's chin. "They're just cold like us, baby." From the driver's seat, the man glanced into the mirror. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his gaze, a softness that barely surfaced. Mia began chattering again, talking about ducks from last week's park visit, and how she wanted their new house to have pink doors. Laya hummed to keep her voice steady, sneaking glances at her phone, counting down minutes and seconds. Her stomach felt like a clenched fist. At the next red light, the man reached behind him without a word and produced a neatly folded cream-colored blanket. "She looks cold," he said gently, holding it toward Laya through the gap in the seats. "Oh, thank you." She sounded surprised by the small act of kindness. Laya draped the blanket over Mia, who smiled sleepily and leaned against her shoulder. The SUV moved again. Silence turned easy, almost companionable. The hum of tires became music. After a while, Laya exhaled, barely loud enough to hear. "I hope this interview works out," she bit her lip. "I really need this." The man adjusted the mirror slightly, eyes flicking toward hers. "Big day?" His tone carried no curiosity, only quiet understanding. "Yeah," she said after a pause. "Been looking for something steady, something that'll let me give her what she deserves." He nodded once, slowly, thoughtfully, and his glance in the mirror lingered a second longer. Whatever passed through his eyes wasn't pity, it was recognition. A few turns later, the SUV rolled to a stop before a sleek glass building stretching high into the gray Seattle sky. Its polished lobby glowed golden behind revolving doors, already busy with people holding coffee instead of dreams. Laya's hands trembled slightly on the strap of her tote. She looked down at her thrift store skirt and the blouse she'd ironed flat on her motel bed, as if neat creases could hide exhaustion. "Here we are," the man said quietly. "This place looks unbelievable," she whispered. Then remembering herself, she smiled politely. "Thank you again. Honestly, you're the kindest Uber driver I've ever met." For the first time, he let out a small chuckle, one corner of his mouth lifting. "Glad I could help," Laya returned his smile. Then she took Mia's hand, closed the door carefully, and walked toward the building's entrance. Against the glass and steel, mother and daughter seemed small, two soft figures stepping into a world that didn't know their names. Inside the car, Julian Hartwell watched quietly. The streetlight turned green, but he didn't move immediately. His eyes stayed on them until the security guard held the door and they disappeared inside. Something in his expression flickered. Tender, reflective, almost protective. Then, at last, he drove away. Inside the building, the warmth hit Laya like another world. Everything gleamed. The marble floors, the brushed metal walls, the faint scent of citrus polish. Women in heels and men in fitted suits moved briskly, their voices low, confident, rehearsed. Laya tightened her grip on Mia's hand as they reached the reception desk. Mia's eyes darted everywhere. "Mommy," she whispered in awe. "It looks like a shiny castle." "Yes," Laya murmured, forcing a shaky smile. "A castle." Before she could speak to the receptionist, a sharp voice cut in. "Excuse me? Children aren't permitted beyond the lobby." Laya flinched. I know, I didn't have anyone to watch her today. I thought if she could sit quietly, 15 minutes, that's all I need." The woman's brow furrowed, unimpressed. The air grew colder. Another employee, this one in a navy skirt suit, approached with a clipboard. Human resources, clearly. Her glance was clipped and assessing. "Miss Monroe," she said flatly, her tone somewhere between judgment and apology. "We expect professionalism from our candidates. This," she gestured at Mia, "is not appropriate for an interview." "It's not a great impression." Laya's throat tightened. She clutched her folder hard enough for the papers to bend. Her cheeks burned with shame. "I understand. I'm sorry," she whispered. "We should just—" But before humiliation could finish its work, another voice spoke. Deep calm filled the space like gravity. "I'll allow it." The entire lobby went still. Heads turned, and standing there, only a few feet away, was the man from the SUV. Except now, he wasn't behind a steering wheel. The crisp white shirt was under a tailored suit, the quiet eyes now carrying authority that filled the marble room. Staff straightened. Someone murmured, "Good morning, sir." Laya blinked in confusion. "Sir?" Then the receptionist leaned forward slightly. "That's Mr. Julian Hartwell," she said under her breath. "Our new CEO." Every piece of air left Laya's lungs at once. Her heart stumbled. "Mommy," Mia whispered loudly, tugging at her sleeve. "Why is the Uber driver wearing a fancy suit now?" Laya thought her knees might give out. "He's not... he..." But words fell apart as Julian walked toward them, his expression composed, unreadable. "Miss Monroe," he said gently but firmly, "I look forward to hearing about your experience. Please come in." Her voice shook. I didn't know. I thought..." "No need to apologize," Julian said. A faint smile, the same calm curve he'd worn in the SUV, softened his face. "This morning, I was only clearing my head before a long day. I suppose I became a driver. If only for a moment." There was no mockery in his tone, only sincerity. A hint of something else, too. Admiration? Amusement? Compassion? She couldn't tell. The HR manager looked stunned into silence. The receptionist busied herself with non-existent papers. Julian glanced at Mia and gave her a polite nod. "Shall we?" Mia grinned as if nothing strange had happened in the world at all. Laya followed, still reeling, forcing her trembling legs into motion. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Inside, polished steel walls stretched tall enough to feel endless. Julian stood centered, hands clasped lightly, calm as ever. Mia hummed under her breath, kicking her small feet against her mother's skirt. Laya focused on the glowing floor numbers, too embarrassed to meet his reflection in the mirror-bright doors. She could still feel her pulse behind her ears. Julian glanced toward her reflection instead, tone quiet but certain. "You stepped into a luxury car," he said, "without knowing where it might take you, but you got in anyway." She turned slightly, unsure if she'd heard him right. He added, voice softer now, "A bit like this interview, don't you think?" Laya blinked. A small, reluctant smile touched her lips for a second. Then it vanished, replaced by the cold sting of reality. This was already more complicated than she had imagined. Laya's hands trembled as she stepped into the glass-walled interview room. Her heart hadn't slowed since she discovered the man she thought was her Uber driver was actually the CEO. The room was sleek and minimalist. White walls, a long conference table, black chairs. 3 people waited, 2 from Human Resources, and at the head, Julian Hartwell. He was already seated, reviewing a folder. When he looked up, their eyes met briefly. His expression was unreadable, calm, professional. Laya cleared her throat, squeezing Mia's hand-ons before guiding her to a cushioned bench in the corner. Mia, quiet and obedient, sat down with her pink dress neatly spread and her stuffed rabbit in hand. "Miss Monroe," the older HR woman said, adjusting her glasses. "Please have a seat." Laya sat opposite the panel. Her nerves buzzed. Her voice, when it came, was small and unsure. The questions began quickly. Your resume shows frequent job changes, one interviewer noted. Can you explain that? Yes, Laya began. Some jobs were temporary. Others I had to leave due to child care conflicts. But I've always worked hard. I've waitressed, done reception, whatever I could. And administrative experience, another asked. We need strong organizational and communication skills. I handled scheduling and correspondence at a small accounting office for 10 months, Laya said. Also, filing, data entry, and client check-ins. Why did that job end? The business closed, she replied, barely above a whisper. The HR woman frowned. It wasn't hostility, but it wasn't encouraging. Julian said nothing. He observed, arms folded, letting his team lead. Laya's palms were damp. Her confidence was slipping. She glanced at Mia, who watched her with wide, worried eyes. Then came the hardest question. You've had multiple employment gaps, the HR manager said. Limited education, a modest skill set. Why should we choose you over more qualified applicants? Silence followed. Laya swallowed. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And then Mia spoke. Her voice was soft but clear. Excuse me, all eyes turned. Mia looked directly at Julian, legs swinging slightly over the edge of the bench. Do you know my mommy works all night sometimes, she said. And even when she's so tired, she still wakes up early to make me pancakes and braid my hair. The room went still. She says, we're going to have a better life. That sometimes you have to be brave even when you're scared. My mommy's the bravest person I know. Laya's eyes filled, her breath caught. She turned, stunned by her daughter's words. Julian stared at Mia, unmoving. His expression shifted. Something deep flickered in his eyes. Not surprise, recognition, a memory. A boy once left in foster care watching his mother walk away. A boy who believed people like Laya didn't exist anymore. He exhaled slowly and turned to Laya. What would your previous employers say about your character? He asked gently. Laya cleared her throat, holding back tears. They'd say I'm dependable. I learn fast. I ask questions if I don't know something, and I never miss a shift, Julian nodded. He looked down at the resume for a long moment, then closed the folder. I think, he said quietly, we may have just found the right person. Laya blinked, uncertain if she heard him correctly. Excuse me, she whispered. Julian met her gaze and smiled warmly, not professionally. You're hired, Miss Monroe. Laya's mouth opened, then closed. She looked down at Mia, who clapped her hands. Thank you, Laya managed, her voice cracking. Thank you so much. The HR team said nothing. One cleared their throat, flustered, but Julian stood, ending the interview. We'll begin onboarding this afternoon. Laya rose on shaky legs. Mia ran up and hugged her waist. As they turned to leave, Julian watched them go, face unreadable, but something had shifted behind his eyes, something permanent. Laya started her new job with quiet determination. She arrived 15 minutes early every day, even when she had to drag Mia out of bed at dawn. Her desk was always neat. Her notes were color-coded. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did, it was soft but thoughtful. People began to notice, not because she tried to stand out, but because she showed up, stayed late, and asked the right questions. Still, she kept her head down. She didn't want special attention, especially not from Julian. Julian Hartwell remained the composed, enigmatic CEO. He walked the hallways with the ease of someone used to power but never abused it. He addressed every employee by name, kind but distant, professional. But sometimes, just sometimes, he lingered near Laya's desk a second longer than necessary. His eyes would catch hers during a meeting, and when she looked away, a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. One morning, Laya stopped at the corner cafe near the office, as she did every weekday. It was small and cozy with green-tiled walls and a chalkboard menu. She ordered her usual medium coffee, 1 sugar, no cream, and reached into her purse. It's been taken care of, the barista said with a grin. Laya blinked. I'm sorry. The barista nodded toward the man walking out the door, coffee in hand, black coat slung over one shoulder. Julian. He didn't look back, but his pace was slower, almost like he was waiting for her to notice. The next morning, she got there earlier, intending to return the favor, but he beat her to it again. A quiet game began. No words, just small gestures, coffee paid for, an extra pastry on her desk by accident, a note from the front desk saying her bus fare had been reimbursed due to an internal transport policy, though no such policy existed. One late Tuesday morning, Laya had to bring Mia to work briefly before school. Their babysitter had canceled, and the buses were behind. She rushed across the sidewalk, guiding Mia by the hand when Mia tripped on her untied shoe and fell to one knee. Before Laya could crouch down, someone else already had Julian. He knelt on the pavement without hesitation, suit trousers brushing wet concrete, and gently tied the laces on Mia's pink sneakers. There, he said, standing good as new. Mia looked up at him with awe. Thank you, Mr. Uberman. Julian smiled. Any time, sweetheart. Laya's heart gave a strange, soft thud. She opened her mouth to say something, but he was already walking away. That Friday, Mia was invited to a Bring Your Family to Work hour hosted by the community committee. Laya hesitated but agreed. Mia was thrilled. While Leia typed up a report, Mia sat in the corner with crayons and a sketchpad. She was quiet the whole time, focused, humming to herself. Just before they left, Mia ran up to Julian's office door, knocked twice, and waited patiently. Julian opened it, surprised. This is for you, Mia said, handing him a folded piece of paper. I drew you. He crouched to take it. Inside was a crayon drawing. Him in a big black car, Laya in the back seat, and Mia in the middle with stars around her head. The nice Uberman who helped my mom, it read in red letters. Julian stared at it, silent. He folded it slowly and walked to his desk, then wordlessly opened the top drawer and placed it inside. His assistant, who had been standing nearby, watched the exchange. After Mia left, she said teasingly, You don't usually keep crayon art next to your signed contracts. Julian looked down at the drawer, then out the window. Some people, he said almost to himself, don't need to knock on a door to enter someone's life. From that day on, Leia began to feel it. The way Julian's gaze softened when she spoke in meetings. How he never interrupted, always listened. How in the middle of chaos, he'd glance her way just to make sure she was okay. Leia felt it, and it scared her because no one had ever looked at her like that, and because deep down she wasn't sure someone like him could ever truly mean it. Rain fell steadily over the city, turning the Seattle skyline into a blur of gray and silver. It wasn't a gentle drizzle, but a cold, relentless downpour that soaked through jackets and turned sidewalks slick and glistening. By evening, most office lights had dimmed. The building was nearly empty, save for a few lingering meetings and the quiet tapping of keyboards. Laya sat at her desk, hunched over a spreadsheet she had been asked to reformat before morning. It was her first time staying late, and she hadn't planned for it. Her phone buzzed, a text from the babysitter. Sorry, I can't make it. Emergency came up? Laya closed her eyes. She had no choice but to bring Mia just for an hour, asking her to wait in the front lobby with snacks and her sketchpad. It was quiet, safe. She'd done it once before, just briefly. She glanced at the clock, almost 700 p.m. Then another buzz. Her heart stopped. Mia is outside. It's cold and raining. Is someone coming for her? The message was from the security guard. Laya stood up so fast she knocked over her chair. She sprinted from the office, nearly slipping as she turned the corner to the elevator. Downstairs, through the tall lobby windows, she saw Mia's small figure near the edge of the overhang, pink dress soaked, arms hugging herself, looking up at the sky with confusion and trembling lips. But someone was already there. Julian. He stood beside her, holding his coat over her head like a makeshift umbrella, shielding her from the worst of the storm. His hair and shoulders were already soaked. Laya burst through the doors just as he knelt to talk to Mia. I'm so sorry, she gasped, running to them. She wasn't supposed to be outside. I didn't think it would rain. She's okay, Julian said. Cold, but okay. He wrapped his coat tighter around Mia and gave Laya a gentle nod. Come on, let me drive you both home. I can call a cab, Laya began. It's fine, he said softly. You shouldn't worry about that right now. Too stunned to argue, she nodded. They rode insolence, the rain tapping the windshield like a soft drum. Julian glanced at their rearview mirror, occasionally checking on Mia curled in the back seat with the coat like a blanket. But instead of her apartment, he turned onto a quiet street lined with trees and porch lights. Leia looked up, confused. You need to warm up, Julian said, pulling into his driveway. And eat, she hesitated. Just for a little while, he added. Please. Something in his voice, unguarded, made her nod. Inside, his home was modern but warm. Books lined the walls. A fireplace sat unlit. The air smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. He handed her a towel, then led Mia to Chang into a tulle sweatshirt that hung to her knees. Dinner was grilled cheese and tomato soup. Simple, comforting. Later, Mia asleep on the couch under a blanket. Laya and Julian sat at the kitchen table with mugs of tea. I'm sorry you had to pick up the pieces of my chaos, she said quietly. Julian shook his head. You don't need to apologize for being a mother. There was a pause. The rain softened outside. Julian stared into his cup. I grew up in foster care. Never met my parents. Moved house to house. I was the quiet kid. People think quiet means cold, so they stopped trying. Laya stayed silent, letting the words settle. I loved someone once, he continued. Back when I was starting my first company, she said she loved me too. But when money ran low, so did her patience. She left, Laya asked. He nodded. Years later, she came back. Once success did, Laya's gazes softened. Since then, Julian said, I've had trouble believing in love that isn't conditional. Then he looked up, meeting her eyes. But Mia looks at you like you're her whole world, and you look at her like you'd give it all up just to keep her safe. Laya's throat tightened. That's not transactional, he said. That's love. Neither of them spoke after that, but in the quiet of his kitchen, with rain falling gently and a child snoring nearby, something passed between them, quieter than a promise, deeper than friendship. The kind of moment that needed no words. The whisper started in the break room. She's the one he always talks to. I saw him bring her coffee last week. Well, she did bring her kid into the office. Maybe she's using the sympathy card. She knew what she was doing. Single moms can be persuasive. At first it was just murmurs, side glances, awkward silences. When Laya entered the room, she tried to brush it off. She told herself it was just her imagination, but soon it was impossible to ignore. One morning, she walked into the elevator, and the two women inside fell quiet, exchanging glances. One of them, a junior executive with a reputation for ambition sharper than her heels, didn't even bother hiding her smirk. I guess sleeping with the CEO has its perks, she whispered as the doors slid shut. Laya's face burned. She didn't say a word. She couldn't. By Friday, Theramers had made their way to human resources. She was called into a closed-door meeting. Two HR representatives sat stiffly at the end of the table, folders open, expressions neutral. A legal advisor was there too, taking notes. We've received multiple reports regarding an inappropriate relationship between you and Mr. Hartwell, one of them said, not looking up. Layla's heart dropped. That's not true, she said, her voice. I've done nothing wrong. We're not making accusations, the woman replied. But in your position and given recent events, particularly your after-hours presence at Mr. Hartwell's residence, it puts the company in a delicate situation. We're here to discuss the potential perception. Perception, not truth, not facts. Perception. Julian wasn't in the room. She didn't know if he even knew the meeting was happening. When they dismissed her, Laya walked out in a daze. She went back to her desk, gathered her things slowly, carefully. Her hands trembled as she placed her mug. Mia scribbled best mom ever in red marker into her tote bag. She knew what she had to do. By the time Julian found out, she had already submitted her resignation. He stormed into HR demanding answers. The moment he saw the complaint file who had submitted it, where the rumors began, he had the woman in question removed from the building before lunchtime. But it was too late. He called Laya. No answer. He emailed, no reply. He went to her desk. Empty. Finally, after 2 hours of driving through traffic, he arrived at the small motel where she had been staying. Room 6B. The door was open. Not ajar, open. A cleaning cart sat outside. The manager shook his head. She checked out this morning, he said. Didn't say where she was going. Paid in cash. Julian stood there for a long time, hands in his pockets, staring at the now vacant doorway. Inside, the room was already stripped. No sign that anyone had lived there. No sign of a little girl in a pink dress who liked to draw. No scent of the lavender shampoo Laya used. Nothing. Gone. He took a slow breath and turned to leave. The rain had started again. Light at first, then heavier. But this time Julian didn't seem to notice. The street was unusually busy for a Saturday afternoon. Leaves swirled in the early autumn breeze as Julian walked with a coffee in hand, lost in thought. He rarely visited this part of the city, but something about today had drawn him here. He passed a small bookstore with colorful posters in the windows. That's when he saw her, a little girl. She stood alone near the entrance, pink dress rumpled, cheeks strewn with tears. Her hands gripped the hem of her sweater, eyes scanning the crowd, frightened. People walked past oblivious. Julian froze. Mia, he said softly. She turned at the sound of her name. When she saw him, her eyes widened with relief. Mr. Uberman, she cried, running toward him. Julian dropped to his knees just in time to catch her in his arms. He held her close, one hand cradling her head, the other wrapped protectively around her trembling body. I got lost, she whispered between hiccups. There were too many people, and I couldn't find Mommy. It's okay, Julian said gently. You're safe now. I've got you. He looked around, heart pounding. Let's go somewhere warm, okay? He carried her to a quiet cafe down the block, sitting her on his lap at a corner table. He ordered hot chocolate, wrapped a blanket around her, and stroked her hair gently. She'll come, he said softly. She's already looking for you. And she was. Laya ran through the streets, dodging people, breath ragged with panic. She'd only looked away for a moment inside the bookstore. One moment, and Mia had vanished. She turned the corner and saw her through the cafe window in his arms. Laya burst inside. Julian stood as she rushed in, but before he could speak, she was kneeling by the table, arms wrapped tightly around Mia. "I'm here. I'm here, baby," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. Mia buried her face in her mother's neck, both of them shaking. Julian stepped back, letting them have the moment. When Laya finally looked up, her eyes met his. She was breathless, tear-streaked, overwhelmed, and then silent. Julian took a quiet step forward and knelt beside her. "You once mistook me for your driver," he said, voice steady. "But I never once mistook you for anything less than extraordinary." Laya blinked. "You are the strongest person I've ever met. The way you fight for her, the way you carry everything alone. You don't ask for help, but you deserve it. You deserve everything." His voice softened further. "I spent years building a life I thought would make me feel whole, but it didn't. Not really. Not until I met you." He glanced at Mia, then back at Laya. "I didn't need more success. I needed something to come home to. I needed you." Laya's expression crumpled, overcome with emotion. Without a word, she reached out for him. Julian pulled her in, one arm around her shoulders, the other still resting protectively on Mia's back. They stayed like that, 3 hearts entwined, holding on to something that finally made sense. No more fears, no more distance, just the quiet, beautiful beginning of something real. The lobby looked different this time, not because the floors had changed or the lighting was new, but because Laya Monroe was walking through it. Not as a nervous applicant clutching a resume, but as the newly appointed director of the Single Parent Support Initiative, a groundbreaking program introduced by the CEO himself. Her heels clicked with quiet confidence, and beside her, Mia skipped in her pink dress, proudly flashing her laminated honorary office citizen badge to every employee who passed by. The entire office had come to love her. They left candies on her desk, drew doodles with her during lunch breaks, and called her Little Sunshine. And somehow, in a way no one could quite explain, the whole office felt lighter since the two of them returned. Julian watched from the glass balcony above, arms folded, a smile tugging at his lips. He never made a show of it, but his presence around Laya and Mia was unmistakable now. Protective, present, deeply personal. That evening, the company hosted its annual anniversary gala. The large atrium was strung with warm lights filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and soft music. Speeches were made, awards given, and then it was Julian's turn to speak. He stepped onto the small stage, tapping the microphone gently. The crowd quieted. "I want to tell you a story," he began, eyes scanning the room until they found Laya's. "About how the smallest, most unexpected moment can change everything." He paused. "Once someone mistook me for their Uber driver. She stepped into my car without hesitation, trusting a stranger with something far more precious than herself, her daughter. She didn't know it, but in that moment, she was the one rescuing me." A hush fell over the crowd. "She reminded me what it means to fight quietly, to love fiercely, and to believe that sometimes the detours in life lead us exactly where we're meant to go." Then he turned fully toward Laya, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Gasps and a few happy laughs rippled through the room. "Laya Monroe," he said softly, voice steady. "Would you, along with your tiny partner in crime, let me be part of your journey from here on out?" Mia, beaming, trotted up the steps, still in her favorite pink dress, and proudly handed him the ring box. Both hands raised like she was holding treasure. Laya covered her mouth, eyes wide with tears. She nodded before the words could even form. "Yes," she whispered 1,000 times. "Yes!" The applause erupted, but in that moment the world shrank to just the 3 of them. Later, as the evening turned to dusk, the crowd dispersed and the last of the lights dimmed. Julian, Laya, and Mia walked hand in hand through a quiet city park. The sky blushed with sunset. Mia skipped ahead, chasing fireflies. Julian pulled close and whispered, "You didn't just step into the wrong car that day." She smiled. "You stepped into the right life." And as they strolled beneath the amber sky, their shadows stretching together across the grass, a final voiceover echoed softly. "Sometimes the wrong car takes you to the right place." Thank you for watching this heartwarming journey of love, resilience, and second chances. If this story touched your heart, made you smile, or brought a tear to your eye, don't forget to subscribe and tap that hype button to support the Soul Stirring Stories channel. We share emotional, real-life inspired tales that heal, inspire, and remind us of the beauty in everyday moments. Your support means the world and helps us continue bringing you stories that truly touch the soul. Until next time, stay kind and remember, sometimes the wrong turn leads you exactly where you're meant to be.